The Hadza tribe of hunter-gatherers in Tanzania have a very interesting method of shooting bows and arrows. Their basic technique is essentially identical to the Western European method of shooting, employing a 2 or 3 finger Mediterranean draw with the arrow on the left for optimum arrow flight and sight picture. However, they sometimes hold one or more arrows pinched in between the thumb and little finger. The Maasai, who are also from Tanzania, appear to use this technique as well, but they are not as well known for their archery. The Hadza method is also somewhat reminiscent of how traditional Japanese archers hold an arrow in the draw hand, albeit in a completely different context. The interesting thing about this method is that I don't think it is necessarily intended to allow for fast follow-up shots. In all the existing footage that I am aware of, you never see them speed shooting with this method, and it inherently isn't much faster than the more typical methods for reloading quickly, such as pulling arrows out of a back quiver. Now, I have not personally traveled to Tanzania, and I have not asked the Hadza as to the how and why they do this. But based upon what I have read and seen, I think that this technique is actually used for stealth. Yep, not speed, stealth. When walking to their hunting grounds, the Hadza carry their arrows in the bow hand, much like other cultures across the world. But when they are in the actual process of shooting, they do one of two things. They either place their extra arrows in between their legs, or they draw the bow with the arrows in the draw hand. That suggests to me that they are deliberately avoiding holding arrows in the bow hand while shooting, and holding arrows in the draw hand is just one possible way to do this. One thing about holding arrows in the bow hand is that there is often a rattling sound produced by the vibration of the arrows against the bow upon release. Here, listen. That sound could potentially alert the prey to the hunter's presence. In particular, many species of deer are infamous for reacting with explosive speed to the sound of a bow being shot, some being so sensitive to the sound that they are able to actually dodge the arrow before it reaches them. Hunters in other parts of the world don't seem particularly concerned by this issue, but then again, they are hunting different animals, so a direct comparison isn't necessarily appropriate. And unlike the Hadza, they are often fighting other humans as well. Regardless of the reason, the Hadza technique is fairly easy to pull off, although with a few quirks. The thumb is usually completely uninvolved with the process of shooting with a 3-finger grip, so putting it to work holding arrows is not complicated. I anchor using my thumb below my ear, but it's still not very hard, even if holding more than one arrow. However, one complication is that it is somewhat tricky in getting to full draw with an anchor close to the face. And even if you do, the arrows naturally come in contact with the body if you pull back far enough. None of the pictures of the Hadza or Maasai shooting with arrows in the thumb show them pulling back as far as they do when not using this technique, nor as close to the face. As for myself, I just gave up, and I allowed the arrows to touch my body. It doesn't seem like it's actually a problem. There is a lot of personal variation among the Hadza in terms of shooting technique, so I think I'm allowed to find my own way of doing it too. Another quirk is that not everyone is able to easily move their little finger independent of their other fingers. I'm a great example, just the way my tendons work. I can replicate the Hadza technique exactly if I put my mind to it, but holding the arrows with just the thumb doesn't feel any less secure. Now, as I said before, I don't think this technique is used for speed, but you can do very fast follow-up shots with a few modifications. If you hold the arrow closer to the nock instead of on the upper third, you can nock the second arrow pretty quick. There isn't much of a cross-loading movement required, nor do you need to feed the arrow in between the string and the riser. One possible disadvantage to this is that the second arrow cants to the side a bit, becoming less streamlined than the original version, which is more vertical. But you could minimize this with a bit more practice. However, having said and done all that, the Hadza's hunting doesn't seem to rely on volume of arrows. As with most hunting, it relies more on teamwork and good marksmanship. Having poisoned arrows doesn't hurt either. I also think that their environment and their tactics are a great example of why holding arrows in the draw hand between the fingers is a method more appropriately reserved for trick shooting rather than for hunting. If they were to employ that particular technique, I think that they would get the point snagged on the countless thorny bushes that they live and hunt in. And I think that they would probably stab each other in the face with poisoned arrows. I mean, just come on, look at this. Holding the arrows vertically in the draw hand makes much more sense. That way the arrows occupy the same profile as the bow. It's safer and it's more streamlined. The Hadza method of holding arrows in the draw hand is really interesting, and I can definitely see some advantages to it. It's quiet and not terribly difficult to do. The Hadza don't hunt too far from their campgrounds, so they don't seem to need quivers or bags for carrying many extra arrows or survival supplies for an extended time in the bush. So it does seem like an appropriate technique for their circumstances. That said, I don't think I'll be hunting with it myself anytime soon. If someone passed a law against using quivers, I would probably stick to holding a single extra arrow in the bow hand, as the rattling noise issue is minimized when using just the one. However, the Hadza method evidently works very well for them in their environment. I think at the very least it's worth exploring and some more experimentation.